himself in his attic.
All right. So we are currently streaming on YouTube, and we are beginning to stream on Twitch in just a moment.
That was a Portrait of Dorian Gray joke for those of you playing along at home.
Wow. Okay.
Are you assuming that our listeners are uneducated or not read?
No, I was just mentioning that.
All right, so
my co-hosts were.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Magic Mics. I am Evan Irwin, and we begin as we do each and every single week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
Buongiorno.
Ruben Bressler.
Oh, hi.
And I want to take a minute before we get started, because Lord knows we have lots of things to talk about this week, by noting to say hello to some of our new listeners, perhaps. Our podcast stats have really been kind of blowing up a little bit, and I just wanted to say thanks for listening to us chitter-chat about Magic.
I'm a little terrified by these numbers. I didn't realize that this many people existed, let alone wanted to hear us talk every week. So thank you. I appreciate it. And I'll try to behave myself, I guess.
He reckons. I reckon. All right. So anyway.
I don't know.
So welcome. Let's get started, because you're listening to the show because we want to talk about Magic culture, Magic community, what's going on with the game, and Lord Almighty. Yeah. Yesterday I had technical difficulties. I turned on, so I have a dual boot Mac Pro. I boot into OS X basically exclusively because who wants to use Windows? And when I try to use Windows, an hour and a half later, I can do things. It turns out that I booted into Windows at like 10:58, sorry, 9:58, because we start the pre-show, like I always do, and then, then it wrecked everything. However, blessings in disguise, because, wow, we got a ridiculous leak today. Now, and we're going to talk all about it, so let's just get started with what the leak is. Someone had noted on Reddit that they had begun to do a survey. Now, you know how people can get paid to do surveys? Well, this person was doing a survey for some amount of money, and he got asked how does he feel about this packaging. Now, this is packaging for Magic products that look like they're basically from the future. We have both the next upcoming blocks, basically. We have the Amonkhet block and what looks like to be the Atlazan block, or Atlazan block, one or the other. And for Amonkhet,
it's aggro.
It's aggro. It's Atlazan.
It's Simic.
It's aggro.
So we have 2 packs of Amonkhet. We have 2 packs for Hour of Devastation, one of which features Nicol Bolas. We have Atlazan, which is, and we'll get to that in just a second, but I think I got an idea where that's coming from, which looks like some sort of like weird merfolk with rainbow hair, which is really cool.
Oh, Vraska.
And Vraska's on the right-hand side of that. Then we have what could be one of the lamest set names ever of Conquest of Power. That's the most generic fantasy thing. Like, really? Conquest of Power? That's where we're going with this?
I mean, our show is called Magic Mics, though. Can we really judge?
We can always judge. Conquest of Power is a thing. It shows Ajani looking all super angry. So, spoiler alert, Ajani makes it through this block. And so what we have here, essentially, is an entire year's worth of sets shown to us all at the same time. So I had like an entire argument just like good to go, just to explain what I felt was happening and why this occurred, blah, blah, blah. And then right before the pre-show happened, this tweet got sent out. So I'm gonna put this on the screen here.
Yes.
Wizards_Magic, the official Twitter account, posted the image that I just spoke about and said, yes, these images are from real a survey? Real guy? All right, sure, whatever. It wasn't like really important that this language is correct. It's fine.
From real a survey of ours. I didn't even notice that.
I know, right?
It's a templating issue that we had on the Monarch token. It's the same person.
Right. It's fine. Who cares? They do their best. But the survey was made to test. The survey was made to test package design concepts, not test actual packaging. Bringing it back to me on this one. Come on now. For real? That's where we're going with this? That's how we pivot? That's how we pivot? Like, no. We weren't for real. We didn't just make it, we did all this graphic design. We got 8 pieces of artwork you've never seen before. We put them together with things that make total sense. Atlazan very much sounds like they're taking the Mayan Aztec cultures and doing the Central America type thing that people have wanted for a very long time now, and turning it into a block that people want. Amonkhet's there, Our Devastation's there with Nicol Bolas, which makes sense because they've already talked about the spoilers or the story spoilers. We're talking about like when you play a Bolas permanent or a Bolas planeswalker, because they see that stuff like Eye of Ugin. So okay. You know what? I don't believe you. I understand it. I just don't believe you. Let me explain what I think happened, okay? So let's bring up this packaging one more time. Now this packaging, if you look closely, is the packaging that kind of curves inward on both sides. This is also known as mass market packaging. This is big box retailers. This is Target. This is Walmart. This is Barnes & Noble. This is how your grandma buys Magic packs. Now, you know who doesn't give a flipping crap about Magic that much? Big box stores. Yeah. To them, these Magic packs are just another widget. They're just another widget with something on it that goes on a shelf that makes them money. And they don't really care about your release dates. They don't care about, how secretive you are in your marketing. They're just like, yeah, this is just a thing. And so you can imagine what would happen if Wizards was like, look, hey, mass market, we want, you guys to buy in on 2017 and let's make Magic, feature in your store, and maybe we want to do more things with Magic in their stores than they've never done before and whatever. And so, you can imagine the big box people might have been like, well, let's do some market research. That's what we do. They take their marketing arms, they ask a bunch of random people what's going on, what they think about something, and then they report back and they make decisions based on that data. So to them, if you're just showing pictures of another widget and they're just showing a consumer pictures of a widget, who gives a crap? To them, it makes no difference. So I don't see anyone necessarily, I don't necessarily see who's on the chopping block here, because ultimately, you can understand both sides of Wizards wants to make inroads in mass market. Mass market wants to understand more about what's going on there. And at some point, there was no communication as to, hey, you should never share these images ever. So is Wizards going to make different decisions about what they do next year based on this? I just don't think so. I think they're already committed. They clearly already have the artwork. They have the design. They have the follow through right there in front of them. They got it busted, and it's fascinating to me that when all the pieces click into place, you go like, oh, well, that's how these things get out there in this fashion. So you tell me, guys, how do you feel about sort of what I feel is an explanation versus what Wizards is saying at this point?
Aaron,
you want to go first?
Do you want to Rochambeau for it? I guess I'll go first. Yeah, look, this is a weird circumstance for a number of reasons. There's nothing really quite like Magic spoiler season or spoilers in general. You can have a slight leak on potential cards that are coming out for games like Pokemon or Hearthstone, but they don't have spoiler seasons. They don't have these long, drawn out. Every day you're meted out a little portion, and given a little bit to build the excitement. Hearthstone sets come out 2 weeks after they're announced. Pokemon and games like Yu-Gi-Oh! Have nothing even close to this. And then outside of TCGs or collectible card games, there's nothing close to this either, because most games are just one shot, that's the game. Sometimes you'll have a new version of the game or something like that, but very rarely is there an addition to the game. Sometimes you'll have something like living card games where you'll have new things that you can add later on. In the pre-show, we were discussing the Versus system game had to replace one of the cards with a newer version. If you want to talk about that, Evan, then we can once we get to a good point, a checkpoint for that, you can let the folks know. But there's nothing like Magic when it comes to spoilers, and so this is all brand new territory. This is intellectual property law. This is internet law, both of which are drastically behind the real world in terms of how they actually work. And this time, it's much more corporate. Most of the time, it's like a store got a photo or like a card was accidentally in a pack. This time, it wasn't like a leak in the dam. The whole river was diverted. Like, there was no mistake really here. There was just miscommunication between Target and Walmart and Wizards of the Coast. Like, this is, I don't see how any one person is at fault for what has happened this particular time. As for the weird description of why or what's happening with these spoilers, I don't know why this tweet was necessary. I mean, it's cool that they want to explain it away, and if it's the truth, then great, they're being open. But if they're trying to pull the wool over our eyes, this is a little bit weird. But I feel like that this is such a bad attempt at if it is a lie, it's such a poor attempt at it that it can't be.
Don't look.
It has to be the real.
It's very. This is not what.
Ignore the man behind the curtain.
Behind the curtain. We're just right. You shut up. I'm going to pull this over here.
Alone, I believe it.
Aaron.
What is the phrase you like to use, Ruben? I'm not angry, I'm disappointed, something like that. I'm disappointed, and here's why. So we were here before when the Oath of the Gatewatch leaks happened, or was it Battle for Zendikar when Worldbreaker and all of them got leaked, Kozilek's Return and all of that.
Oh, yeah.
And we talked about how leaks don't have to be the end of the world. And we referenced a video game company or a computer game company where, their game had been leaked or elevated had been leaked. And instead of going, this is terrible, what are we going to do? They embraced it. And they realized that their fans were so hype for the product that they simply chose to keep the hype going, and their game ended up being very successful. And we were talking about how you can either choose to try to furiously plug all of these leaks, or you can choose to stoke that fire and keep it going. The fact is that people were really hype about this. There was a lot of discussion of Ajani appears to survive this block. That's really great. Is that Veraska? We see merfolk. Does that mean more merfolk? Nicol Bolas being confirmed. What does Atlazon mean? Is that Aztec? Are we being underwater? There was a lot of hype generated by this. And again, I feel like this was a missed opportunity of you could have either chosen to fuel that fire and keep people's imaginations going and things like that, or you could just simply say no and smack it down. And I was just like, I really feel like we didn't learn anything from the last series of leaks. We again bought into this panic, everything's falling apart. You can play it differently and everything's okay. And it just really made me feel disappointed that we went back to the old script, the old playbook of this is how you handle leaks. I don't think that worked for them last time, and I don't think it's working for them now.
Well, I think what you saw was what I would describe as corporate policy. Sure. Corporate policy doing X. Corporate policy changing takes Y effort, which is not going to happen until Z thing in the future happens, which may not happen anytime soon.
Okay,
it didn't happen anytime soon.
I'm going to go for the throat here and say that this tweet, nothing about this tweet says corporate. It's spelled wrong. It's worded poorly. Like, where's the corporate here? Like, there's a way that you could. This does not come across as a polished effort to cover up something. This comes across as haphazard, tacky. Like, there's just nothing about this that screams professionalism. I'm sorry, but this is supposed to be a professional effort. No, I'm
not saying that this is the professional way to adhere to it. What I'm saying is the reason they're not handling it differently is because they're. Again, I'm just pontificating. I don't know.
Yeah.
My guess as to why they're handling it the way they handle it, whether it was then or whether it was now, is because you have a large corporate structure. You have a huge conglomerate. You have a monster parent company who has lots of shareholders, and it's a public company, and your business is built around privacy and keeping things secret and not letting anybody know anything, and this is happening, and to do anything different than, oh my God, let's close ranks and say nothing's wrong and there's no man here and blah blah blah. That's kind of like their modus operandi. Now, I wish it was different. At this point, personally, I feel like, let's imagine that Wizards does the opposite, right? So what does the opposite look like? Is the opposite they somehow make the pages for Amonkhet and Our Devastation and Atlazon and Conquest of Power, which is still a terrible name. I want to hate that for the next year. I can't handle it. And they update it, and they show those things.
Because apparently somebody has snapped up Atlazan.com out from under them. They already had Amonkhet and Hour of Devastation, but apparently in the wake of this release, one of our Twitch chat celebrities, Johnson_MC, thanks for the info here, Atlazan.com got snapped up, so they're going to have a fun meeting on that one.
Wow. Well, there you go. So anyway, Wizards found themselves and then this is what happens, people. It happens in threes. You know what I'm saying? We had the picture of the game day playmat and the game day foils and stuff. We had the story spoilers that we're just going to get to here in just a minute. And then we had the packaging leaks. And so, like, it's weird how that kind of happened. It's a big deal. I think Wizards could go an entirely opposite direction and say, you know what? Why don't we just say these are the next set names? You got us. Something stupid happened. Okay, whatever. Now, the question is, how do they link together? That's what you're interested in. We're still Magic players. We still want to know what happens. We've got this weird glimpse. Yeah, we're drinking from the fire hose a little bit, but that's all right. Like, the fire hose is already out. The water's already out. Toothpaste already there. What you going to do about it? And instead, they're just like, there ain't no toothpaste around here. We talk about toothpaste. I can't handle it. So let's keep moving here. So Wizards did some official previews, like some actual official previews, and they involved a brand new Ajani. And so let's take a look at Ajani Unyielding. This is a white-green, 4 generic mana mythic planeswalker, Ajani as it turns out, with 4 loyalty that has a +2 that reveals the top 3 cards of your library. You put all non-land permanent cards revealed this way into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. -2: you may exile target creature. Its controller gains life equal to its power. And -9: you put 5 +1/+1 counters on each creature you control and 5 loyalty counters on each other planeswalker you control.
Hello.
And you kill your opponent as it works. So, and here's the problem. Here's the problem. Who cares? Who cares? I'm not trying to make a think about it. I swear to God, I'm just like, does anybody give a crap about this planeswalker at this point? Everyone was just like, like 6 mana, really? And the other problem is that, like, it's starting to follow this very familiar +1 gets more cards in your hand, -something kills a thing, and then some weird ultimate that you should be winning when that happens because reasons. I love Magic cards, and I'm telling you, this is one of the biggest mythic letdowns I've seen in a while. People were just like, "That's it. That's what you got for me."
I think it was a combination of things. If I remember correctly, it was introduced on stream. Was it during Denver or Madrid?
Madrid, I think, right? It was just the British.
It was just introduced on stream. There was no
Right.
sort of lead into it. It was just bam. Here's the spoiler. It doesn't immediately fit into any decks that are popular and standard right now, like green white. I know some of the guys brought green white humans to Denver, but I can't imagine they want a 6 casting cost planeswalker. I will say the art looks great. Like Ajani's been hitting the gym. That's awesome. I think the exile
Are you more
target
on the Ajani train now? Are you better with Ajani?
On the Ajani train. I will accept this Ajani, but I'm not standing for this Ajani or anything crazy. I do like that his -2 kills Emrakul, who's obviously very prominent in the standard, so that's cool. The 5 +1/+1 counters, it's cute. But yeah, there's just nothing really earth-shaking about this. It's many of us were at the Envy. I was at the Envy when it got spoiled. I couldn't really muster up the energy to care. It was just really awkward on all fronts. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's neat that that they managed to sneak the exact wording from Swords to Plowshares onto a Magic card.
Yeah.
I just think it's a cool thing that they managed to do that. But you're right, it is a little, I don't know, somehow it's underwhelming. Even though it's it's a huge finisher style planeswalker, it's a card advantage engine, it protects itself, it has a big splashy finishing move, but it just didn't click, and I'm not exactly sure why. But yeah, I am failing to get excited by this new Ajani.
Yeah, it's tough, but okay, so let's keep going here. So the new Ajani was introduced alongside of the Planeswalker versions, or the Planeswalker deck versions, rather. And as such, we got to see that there's not only going to be Ajani in this block, there's going to be Tezzeret. Yep. So, old Tezzy Boom Booms. Let's take a look here.
What?
Tezzeret, the master of metal.
The master, I was so excited, I forgot to make a slide for it.
Wow.
But you know what? As we're here, I'm going to go find them as we say that.
All right, I'll take over for you.
Go, Ruben, go.
Tezzeret, lead singer of Metallica, is a 4 colorless blue-black, 4 generic blue-black planeswalker Tezzeret, as it turns out, that comes into play with 5 loyalty. The +1 is reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal an artifact card. Put that card in your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. in a random order. The -3 is target opponent loses life equal to the number of artifacts you control, so you can use that immediately. And it also has a -8 of gain control of all artifacts and creatures target opponent controls. So it does this one, as opposed to the previous Ajani that we discussed, doesn't protect itself, is kind of a card advantage engine. But yeah, this is for the dual decks, right? This is for the Planeswalker decks.
That's right.
So it's not supposed to be making standard.
No,
right? That's the idea.
Right. The idea is that it's interesting and it's good. You can probably, I think they always include a tutor for it in the deck, so that's neat.
Right.
It's the face of the deck, which is cool. I agree that multiple photoshops have been made of him holding a guitar, which is totally awesome. But ultimately, as a 6-mana walker, you're like, okay. But the weird thing is that they made another 6-mana Ajani, who is arguably pretty sweet. It's kind of neat. I mean, clearly they want one to be better than the other one, but this one's not that bad. But first, Aaron, do you have any feelings, thoughts, whatever, about Tezzeret, Master of Metal?
I will say, you brought up you brought up the fact that it didn't really have like a defensive ability that could really protect it. And we're certainly going to get to the card a little later, I think. But I think it plays really well with the Black Story card that was previewed, and with the new ability. I think it plays really well with that. Sure. And I think that there absolutely is room for like a blue-black artifact deck in Standard. And I hope that, Tezzeret can certainly help it get there.
So next is Ajani Valiant Protector. This is the Planeswalker deck version of Ajani. He is also really cool looking. I got on the screen right now. Green, white, and 4 generic mana for a 4 loyalty mythic planeswalker, of course. It's +2, puts 2/+1/+1 counters on up to 1 target creature. +1, you reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card. You put that card in your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. And -11. Yeah. 11. Put X +1/+1 counters on target creature, where X is your life total. That creature gains trample until end of turn. So clearly you're building a ridiculous monster, building it, and then boom, you go off, and that's totally cool. Being able to tutor for a creature on demand is really sweet. Like the official pack Ajani, the Ajani Unyielding, you reveal the top 3 and get all non-land permanents. Note that you don't get all the sorceries or the instants or anything. These are just permanents. Whereas this Ajani basically says you're going to get a creature no matter what, 100% guaranteed on a +1. Now, it's not protecting itself. That's a thing. Right. But it is kind of cool. And again, if anything, it's a little bit better than...
it goes to 6 on the first turn.
But it also protects itself in a way where it takes maybe a smaller creature and lets it be bigger in order to really protect it.
Right.
I will say that my only real disappointment is that the Master of Metal is not the Planeswalker that goes to 11.
Wow.
It's my real upsetting situation.
Man.
That's a Spinal Tap reference.
That is a Spinal Tap joke. She don't.
Ruben, just so you know, Deadly Recluse has reach. You do not. So just.
Wow.
Okay, well.
Wow.
Fine.
All right.
In any case, neither of these Planeswalker. I mean, honestly, I guess the first Ajani is gonna see play. Like none of these are gonna see standard play.
I don't know. It's pretty not great. All right, so we're gonna keep moving here. So Wizards, I thought they had this figured out a long time ago. I thought this was not an issue anymore. That they discovered that they can't name their files. Like MTG story _01.jpg, MTG story _02.jpg. And it turns out that Magic players will start guessing file names if they start seeing things like patterns like that. And sure enough, we got all 4 of the, it's 4, right, of the story spoilers for Ether Revolt, rather.
Ether Revolt, yes.
Yes, and so let's talk about those currently. Now, first we have the black one, which is Battle at the Bridge. It's a black and X for a
Battle at the Bridge.
Battle at the Bridge. Battle at the Bridge. Black and X for a rare sorcery that has Improvise, also known as Convoke for artifacts. Your artifacts can... Listen to this sentence. Your artifacts can help cast this spell.
Yeah, that's a weird... Boy, there's some weird wording in this set. We already saw a card that has the word lesser in the text. It's in the scrap basket.
Right.
Trawler.
And then this guy, Scrap Trawler. and then battle at the bridge.
Improvise.
First of all, improvise is a cool ability name.
It's neat.
But the sentence "your artifact can help cast this spell" is like how okay, tell me more. How do they help cast the spell?
What can they do?
Take the card from my hand and put it onto the battlefield? How does this work?
You mean the battlefield?
The battlefield?
Yeah, it's just they're anthropomorphizing the artifact.
They sure are. It's really weird. So anyway, each artifact you tap after you're done activating mana abilities pays for 1 generic mana. Again, another sentence, which is really weird. They've never put it that way before. Okay, right. Sure. Anyway, target creature gets -X until end of turn, and you gain X life. So that is clearly a game, a game changer, particularly in limited. Will be a huge limited bomb there. Depending on how good artifacts are and how many clue tokens you're going to be tapping, it could very well be good in standard. It is unclear. So Aaron, as our kind of default black mage here, how you feeling about Battle at the Big Bad Bridge?
I am never going to be able to hear it normally. Like if I go to the pre-release, I'm going to hear this in Ruben's voice, and it's going to be glorious. I really like improvise. I think it plays really well with the Tezzeret that we've seen. I think gaining life is something that there's been people are still trying to find out the right control deck. Jeskai control is kind of seeing play right now, but life gain is very relevant. Thermal Alchemist Burn is still running around. Being able to gain life can be great for control decks, especially it also plays well with previous sets. You mentioned clue tokens. I think my first reaction when I saw this was playing puzzle knots and all sorts of other janky artifacts, but you could also play something like Tireless Tracker, get clue tokens, and this is even better. You're doing things with your clues, which I know people have been trying to do forever. And so I love this card. Again, I think if you can get it big enough, you can kill Emrakul. I'm just saying.
If you can get it big enough.
I'm just saying, as I think there's a lot of room for that. There's a lot you can do with this card, and I love it. I love the art. I love the flavor text. Bigger than you, bigger than all of you. I'm completely here for this card. I think it's great.
Apparently, this is just the new way that these are written. I'm looking up Convoke creatures.
No, you're right. And actually, I was literally about to make that point. Now, originally Convoke said each creature you tap while playing this spell reduces its cost by 1 generic mana, or by 1 mana of that creature's color. Now, of course, artifacts don't necessarily have color. Not all the time. Anyway, the point is, when they reprinted Court of Calling in M15, for example, they did say your creatures can help cast this spell. Each creature you tap while casting the spell pays for 1 generic mana, or 1 mana of that creature's color. So that's great that things can help cast your spell. Still feels weird. Okay. Anyway, and so anyway, so people are complaining about my mic. If my mic is still incorrect, please let me know. So that's weird. The point is, we're going to move on to the next spoiler that came from the story spoilers, and that was Itty Bitty Cruel Ultimatum. Dark Intimations is a red, black, blue, and 2 generic mana, also known as Grixis colors and 2 generic mana, for a rare sorcery that each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker, then discards a card. You return a creature or planeswalker card from your graveyard to your hand, then you draw a card. When you cast a Bolas planeswalker spell, exile Dark Intimations from your graveyard, that planeswalker enters the battlefield with an additional loyalty counter on it. Wow. So, first of all, the words Bolas planeswalker spell, pretty hot fire. Secondly, a kind of baby Cruel Ultimatum where you just get like 1 instead of 3 of everything is still amazing and still very exciting. And I'll just quote here, I think that Brad Nelson had a really great idea, or a really great call, where he said that Nicol Bolas is going to enter the battlefield with 1 less loyalty counter than his ultimate, and will need something like this to be in the graveyard in order for his ultimate to fire. Basically, he'll be all minuses, but his biggest minus will need something like this in order to pump it up. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I like that a lot. And there are also a number of other ways to, as we saw earlier, Ajani, for example, puts 5 loyalty counters on all your planeswalkers. There might be a number of ways to add more counters to Nicol Bolas. So if Nicol Bolas comes in, for example, with 6 and you need 7 for the ultimate, but it only has minus abilities, like Sarkon the Mad, originally was the first planeswalker with 3 minus abilities, although he could use all 3. That's an interesting way to sort of take the character of Nicol Bolas, someone who's constantly looking for being greater, doing something more, and having to jump through another hoop to be able to fire off some ridiculous planeswalker ultimate, which I can only assume is you win the game, right?
Probably.
Yeah, it tends to be his thing.
That-
I think
that's
that
his
this
thing.
is nice.
Yeah,
I think it's nice that this is confirmation that he is a part of all of this, because there was the, yeah, we have Tezzeret, but is it necessarily word association, where if you have one, does that mean Bolas is nearby? And I think that this is sort of confirmation that it is. Whenever I see the word each opponent, I immediately think of two-headed giant, which is great. I know my local game store, as part of our pre-release schedule, we have two-headed giant. And anytime you see each, that means if you're playing two-headed giant, both of them have to sacrifice a creature, and both of them have to sacrifice a planeswalker, which I'm completely here for. I love killing people with Debt to the Deathless, so that's relevant to my interests. And yeah,
I would note that we still have other Nicol Bolases, in Magic, that this is also going to pump.
Can we talk about, though, how much people love Cruel Ultimatum? And I don't know, I'm not saying I don't love it, but I just think it's fascinating that card has such a following to it, where there are people that love them some Cruel Control, and they want nothing more than to get that card off. And, there were people that when they saw this card, it sort of tapped into that consciousness, and people were living for this card. Like, it just seems kind of innocuous. But again, there's that small group of people that loves Grixis, they love Cruel Ultimatum, and damn it, they want to play this card, and God bless them. I think it's great.
So, Aaron, have you cast Cruel Ultimatum?
I've never cast a Cruel Ultimatum.
Boy,
that's why right there. That's why you're all going like, oh my god, I get to Cruel, like a little Cruel, like a little tiny bit Cruel. Yeah. Like, they're flipping out, because let me tell you, man, Cruel Ultimatum is just not a fair Magic card. There's nothing about it.
You look at it, though, and it looks kind of harmless for the most part,
Ooh,
and then...
Wow. Cruel Ultimatum is the least harmless looking card I've seen in my life. It is just aggressive. It's like, here are all of the things you would ever want to do on a Magic card, but you will pay retail.
But I love it. I love that
it's
it has
only an
like
11 for 1 or whatever.
Whatever, it's fine.
I'm happy for them, though. Let them have this.
9 for 2 or whatever.
Yeah, I think that Dark Intimations... Also, is there just not going to be a Bolas in this set?
I do not think there's going to be a Bolas. I think when we saw what was just, crazy market research or whatever packaging that had Nicol Bolas that we'd never seen before in our lives on it, pretty sure Nicol Bolas is in the next set.
I also really like the Skeleton Pharaoh thing that was on the Amonkhet packaging, too, that were the Hour of Devastation. That was dope.
I like the kitty cat mask. There's
on the Angel, yeah.
Yeah, there's like a gold kitten mask or a cat mask or whatever on one of the characters.
It reminded me of the Katy Perry Dark Horse video where she has the little cat Egyptian girls. That's what it reminded me of.
I like it. It's pretty cool. We only have a very small window people can see pictures of it. Okay. It's fantastic. All right, so...
We'll gift that one up in no time.
Right. There are more spoilers, ladies and gentlemen. The gift that keeps giving is Pia's Revolution. A red and 2 generic mana rare enchantment. Whenever a non-token artifact is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, return that card to your hand unless target opponent has Pia's Revolution. Deal 3 damage to him or her. This card is bad. Because it's the same thing that makes all of them bad. It gives your opponent the choice. No matter how hard they try to push the Punisher mechanic, it's not good enough. And so, it doesn't key off clues, because clues sacrifice themselves or tokens. They can't go back even if you wanted them to your hand. And so, ultimately, it's cool because it's, Pia's Revolution, because it's a big story card.
It's like Athreos for artifacts.
Right.
Sure.
And Athreos could turn into a 5/4 indestructible creature. It was still not really that good.
And nobody played with it. Yeah.
Right. With flavor text of Pia's passion was directed at the big picture, at making real, lasting change. Meaning she clearly has a sledgehammer in the middle of some sort of factory.
Sure.
Big, lasting, throwing hammers in the gears,
Look, man, when you have a hammer, every problem looks like a nail, right?
I bet, you guys, I bet if you could take her pulse right now, it would feel just like a sledgehammer.
Wow.
All right, so the 5 of you will get that, but it's
I'm just gonna sleep.
Okay, so
let you do
the next.
10% references.
Would either of you like to share any opinions about Pia's Revolution? I don't think there's a lot of them.
Nope.
Guys, because Disallow is way more exciting.
Agreed.
There was a card once upon a time, because we are old men. Me and Ruben, we will harken back to the halcyon days of Ravnica Standard, not Return to Ravnica Standard, Ravnica Standard.
Yeah,
And
back when they printed Magic cards on banana leaves.
They really did, and it was fantastic. And at the end of it, we would put meat in there. And we would have little magic tacos. But no, there was a card, and there was an entire guild called the Simic, and there was a card called Plax Manta that was pretty sweet. But there was also this card called Void Slime, and it was a rare. It was 2 blue and a green, and it countered target spell or activated ability or triggered ability. And it was like, whoa! And that card saw plenty of standard play. It's so versatile. That's why it's always awesome. It's weird that a lot of the spoilers that we see, whether they're intentional or not, so many of them are like, can we just screw Emrakul enough? Like, Ajani is going to Swords to Plowshares it, and this thing is going to stop the trigger, or just counter it entirely, of course. So anyway, Disallow, to be clear, is a 2 blue, 1 generic mana rare instant that counters target spell, activated ability, or triggered ability. That's weird. It's almost like I said that it was 2 blue and a green, and now it's just 2 blue and a generic mana.
Weird.
I would call that an upgrade. I would put that in the upgrade pile. Creep. I think we're in the creepy pile. Yeah, that got weird fast. Either way, Disallow is a card that's going to see a lot of play because it stops all the things. It stops things you don't want to happen. It stops things, that you feel like you can. It gives you so much control. The ability for control decks to say, that's fine. Like, I want you to have your Emrakul because of reasons. I'll just counter the trigger that gives you, my next turn. Like,
or vice versa.
Right. Absolutely. So, that type of option is incredible. Ruben, how do you feel about this one?
It's great. I think this is exactly what Control needs. Traditional blue mana control like Aaron wants to have in Standard.
Careful what you wish for.
Well, look, man. One of the patron saints of blue control decks, Shaheen Sarani, said that the pieces that have already been spoiled with Battle at the Bridge, Dark Intimations, and Disallow, you already have enough for a mostly 2-color splash red control deck, and all he says that we need is for one of the 150, 180 cards that haven't been spoiled yet to be a halfway decent 2-mana removal spell. That's all that you need, apparently, to have a really playable control deck in Standard again. A traditional, Fire and Brimstone, I'm going to counter everything and have like 3 win conditions.
Draw, go, really? That's where we're going? Yeah. Aaron, is that what you want?
Right now.
Is that what you want?
I want that. No, I'm just saying that, like, I do kind of worry a little bit. Overall, I do like the card. I think that we have a lot of decks right now that this could deal with. Either Works Marvel, to be able to counter the Marvel trigger, that's dope. To counter Ishkana, counter Emrakul. There's a lot of things this card can handle, but, we talked a couple shows ago about narrow hate cards, and it's really great that we have things like summary dismissal, I think it is, that also exiles, and it's great that blue has
that says and instead of or.
I'm just getting to a point though of it's really great that blue has all of these things, but this is what if you're not playing blue, you still have to eat the Emrakul trigger. You still have to watch a Marvel go off. I worry that we're still in that space of just really narrow hate cards. This is a fantastic hate card, but if you're not playing blue, and let's be fair, who's playing blue right now?
We desperately need some diversification in the metagame.
Yeah, I like this as an answer. I just think it's something that could stand to maybe be in other colors or on other cards. Like we're just churning out counter spells.
I need more things that screw over Emrakul, yes. Your problem right now is your blue-white spirits versus your green-black delirium. Congratulations, that's your format. Aren't you glad they extended the size of Standard? Fantastic. So that's what we're really hoping for Aether Revolt is to get those types of cards that have those those big effects of changing the metagame. That's what we're hoping. And so here was an official spoiler. This was apparently official. This is the Heart of Kieran. Mm-hmm. It is a 2 generic mana mythic legendary vehicle, and they've been doing such a bang up job at getting those vehicles right. Surely this one's not busted. Well, it's a 4/4 that has flying and vigilance with crew 3, or you may remove a loyalty counter from a planeswalker you control rather than pay Heart of Kieran's crew cost. So let's just go ahead and say, flavor-wise, this thing is amazing. Mm-hmm. Think about it with the new Chandra. You can play the new Chandra plus 1 Heart and play Heart of Kieran. And if you really wanted to, you could activate it. I thought that was sweet. I thought that was fantastic. Now, let's just note that this is not as good as Smuggler's Copter. This isn't going to replace Smuggler's Copter. Well, what it's going to be is probably, Smugglers 5 and 6, basically. This card, I think, absolutely is good enough to see play. For God's sake, we're already seeing vehicles hit vintage. So it's not like we have to go around and go like, man, I wonder if these vehicles are good. Like, no, it's fine. It's really good. The ability to give an alternate cost is fantastic. Like, it's already basically Sarah Angel for 2 mana. Oh, man, I got to jump through a hoop. Oh, that's just terrible. So giving it the ability to not need a 3-power creature in order to activate it sounds to me like it's the perfect control finisher. Because control decks like to grind out incremental advantage. They want to use their big planeswalkers. And if their planeswalkers can turn this thing on instead of having to have a 3-power creature, well, then that's all the better. So then you don't even care about creatures.
Yeah, I like this, and I also like the design space of just using loyalty to pay a cost. I like when they take things that we're doing improvise, where you can tap artifacts as convoke itself, being able to tap creatures. I think that's a really neat space that hasn't been occupied before. And then there aren't many ways to remove counters. This is sort of beneficial, like you're doing it to your own planeswalker, but, it's still something we don't see very much. And I love this. Like, I would love to see more of being able to use loyalty to pay for things. I think this is really great.
Yeah, I think that we've already got a couple of ways that we're increasing the number of loyalty on our planeswalkers and messing around with loyalty already to begin with. And so using it as a cost at instant speed is super cool. And I think that going back actually to the other spoiler, which I have already forgotten the name of, Disallow, having a control deck that now has the capability to counter ultimates, even if a planeswalker resolves, and have a big giant blocker for your opponent's smugglers copters, with only having to have your own control cards. You don't have to try to shoehorn in 2-drops and 3-drops anymore. And so I think that that's going to be a huge boon to that style of play. I think this is a super interesting card. The fact that it's already a 4/4 flying vigilance for 2, it could just not have the loyalty phrasing on it, and people would still be like, that's just a 2-mana 4. That's just a 2-mana Sarah Angel. How can I not? How can I not try to make that work? But the phrasing allows it to be played in control decks. And so it's a very interesting design space for sure.
Yeah, I mean it's just a fantastic blocker because you can do that at instant speed. That's the thing. It kind of says it, but it doesn't really explain it on the card that you can remove a loyalty counter anyway. But to activate its crew ability, that's an instant speed ability. So now you can instant speed on their turn, give yourself a Sarah Angel to block with. And I was looking at some of the chat, they're just like, what other vehicles other than Thopter have made it to older formats? Like Sky Sovereign.
Sky Sovereign,
God's sake!
Renegade Freighter saw playing.
Was in
Fleet Wheel Cruisers in vintage for sure.
Yeah, you
basically
saw
all of
it's
vintage play.
Fine, I promise.
Yeah.
So how do you guys? So this just popped up, and I just want to touch on this really briefly. There was a Inkmoth Nexus that was shown as a promo version. It's going to be a WMCQ promo. I'm kind of like, okay, that's neat. All right, that's fine. Is there anything else beyond, okay, this is neat and fine?
It's a card that people will actually use.
Right. I think that that's the big deal here, is that it's a card that sees play in multiple decks in multiple formats.
Right. So
it will see a lot of play, which is what you want out of your WMCQ promos. I think that this is a knock it out of the park home run.
Wasn't the previous one Snapcaster Mage? Am I correct on that? Remember?
Snapcaster Mage, Liliana of the Veil, and now Inkmoth Nexus. I believe are the 3.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if Liliana became first or after because, there's that guy from the weekend on the Snapcaster Mage one.
Right. Yeah.
It was great. I mean, they did a great job.
The
I love his work.
is a guy, though, not the guy.
The Weekend is a dude. He's,
Sure.
Your kids can tell you about it.
My kids can't tell me about it. They can tell me about all sorts of things these days.
Your kids will also explain my sledgehammer joke to you.
Because I certainly didn't get it.
Isn't it
Harmony.
Isn't it a jackhammer?
No, it's Fifth Harmony. It's a song called Sledgehammer.
Oh my God! All right, so we're moving on to Gather the Townsfolk. We had what I would describe as some pretty serious drama show up. Now, the man known as Shouei Nakamura is one of the most beloved, respected, appreciated, one of the people who has played the most Magic Like
He
literally.
has played the most.
How many Planeswalker
Magic.
points was that? 100,000?
Over
Last
100,000?
week we talked about how he hit 6 digits in
Now,
Planeswalker.
Granted, someone's going to say, casually, I've played more, blah, blah, blah. But okay, so let's just say in terms of, constructed matches that are reported on his DCI number, he's number one. Okay. Into the Hall of Fame, no question. It was not a question. First ballot, 100%, Shuhei's in, no doubt. Cut to Grand Prix Detroit, right? Remember that which one it was?
Mm-mm.
No? Grand Prix Denver, sorry. Grand Prix Denver, on camera, Shuhei is playing, and he's losing. And he has 7 mana. And in his hand, he has a Stasis Snare that, of course, can answer a creature. And he has Avacyn. Now, the grand total converted mana cost of those cards is 8. So he needs 8 mana to play these spells. And he plays the Stasis Snare for 3 mana, of course, and it gets countered. Goes in his graveyard. He then plays his Avacyn for 4 mana. It gets countered. He untaps. He draws. He scoops. Now, when you have this type of scenario, it's very polarizing because the internet wants to get the pitchforks. All the pros just want to figure out what in the world's going on.
Right.
And in the middle is what actually happened. Somewhere in there, mistakes were made, and the question was intent. The question was, should it have happened, should it not have happened? And when you watch it, you see him like touch his mana, play with his mana, what I would describe as counting his mana, but certainly, moving around his lands to see what he can do, looking at his hand, looking at his lands, looking at his hand, looking at his hands. Okay. And then that happens, and the question was basically if Avacyn had not gotten countered, that was potentially a game, winning play right there. And so, what happens, right? So Chris Bakula points it out, and then Shuhei later issued an actual response on his Twitter, and he said, I made a terrible mistake. It is 100% my bad, and I'm paraphrasing here, I understand what everyone thinks about that, essentially, and that he understands that basically now he gets to play the villain. And lots of people who are well known in the Magic community get to play that villain role. If they do something dumb, whether it's a mistake or not, and they suddenly try to go like, well, I'm actually not this person that you think I am, I just made a mistake, oh my god. And so the last thing I want to pivot into before I get your all's opinions, which was a post by Shahar Shinhar on Twitter, which quoted Paul Rietzel, who then quoted Ben Stark. It's funny how these kind of, there's a whole chain of popular Magic players, professional guys. Anyway, Ben Stark, smart guy, suggested something like a 1 to 3 month breather, quote unquote, for gold and or Hall of Fame level players who make, gold plus or Hall of Fame level players who make egregious, obscene, or beneficial GRVs. This is one of the things, first of all, GRV is a game rule violation. If you pay 4 mana for your 5 mana spell, that's a problem. You basically, quote unquote, cheated in the eyes of the rules. It's called a game rule violation. And then there's the question of intent. And as Paul Riesel goes on, no statement or acknowledgement of intent, just saying that this is unacceptable in tournaments for players of your stature. And so then became the conversation about how do you define egregious? What is egregious? People make mistakes. What happens? And then Shahar's like, you have a committee to decide. And Helena's like, yes, but being human means potentially making mistakes. And so we also, and then someone kind of notes in there like, hey, you knock somebody out for 3 months, that can kill a career. That can just completely mess them up for, a dozen events almost these days. And so, and I think Ari Lax shows up and correctly points out, hey, that kind of draconian rules enforcement is literally what makes new players afraid of events because, oh my God, I did something wrong. Oops, you're out for a month or you're out for 2 events or whatever it is. I understand the need and the idea that because it works for a certain sport, it should work for Magic, essentially. If you think of Magic as a sport, it can work for this one, it can work for that one. But because the world of Magic is so nuanced, and the idea of cheating can sometimes go unnoticed for a very long time, and we've certainly seen that from people who are very good, who've gone a very long time without getting caught. And again, you have this entire factor of, my God, doesn't everybody love Shuhei? What happens?
Yeah, it's my brain shut down. I didn't know what to do with this because on the one hand, I know in my heart of hearts, on this hand, Shuhei doesn't cheat. Like, this is a set in stone thing that I know.
Right.
Then in this hand, I see a video that is Shuhei cheating. And the cognitive dissonance between these two could not interact with each other. I couldn't figure it out. Like, the video is really bad. If you go back and look at the video, it's from round 4. It's about a little less than 4 hours into the day 1 coverage from Denver. And I'm not smart enough to figure out what exactly has happened here. And I don't want to butt into what exactly has happened here. But those two facts remain clear. This it looks really bad. Shuhei is a pillar of the game. Like, what? I don't know what to do with this, with my information. So this was very jarring for me personally, as someone who gets very attached to the the popularity, the popular characters within this show that I watch every weekend of professional Magic the Gathering played at the highest level by the smartest people in the world. This very easily could have been a mistake. When you play 1 million games of Magic, I don't think that's an exaggeration. When you play 1 million games of Magic, you're gonna make errors. And so I don't know what this is, other than I guess it's an error. But you watch the video and it's not good. I am at a loss, really.
I think what you have is what they describe in the Star Trek world as the Kobayashi Maru.
Okay.
You have the unwinnable situation.
Yes.
Either you choose a bad option or you choose a bad option.
The worst option, yeah.
Basically, you decide which one is the worst of the two. So, Aaron, how do you feel about what's going on with old Shuhei?
Oh, Shuhei, my heart hurts. I love Shuhei. I've said it before. When I was doing the deck tease, I wanted him on my show so bad, and we just weren't able to make it work, with the interpreters and the time zones and things like that. But I've always been a big Shuhei fan, and this one stung a little bit. I do want to build off of what Ari Lax was saying, is to, if we move into sort of this draconian rules enforcement, I think not only does it scare new players away, but I also think another area in which it would negatively affect people is judge calls. Calling a judge still has a very negative stigma around it. And, when you're on, even just having an opponent call a judge and, it has nothing to do with you, but it still feels really terrible to see your opponent walk away from the table and you immediately go into, oh my God, what did I do? And so I worry that if we move into some more harsher enforcement, that's going to make that interaction a lot worse too. I do want to say overall, though, I think Shuhei played this well. He put out a very simple tweet, and the tweet verbatim is pretty plain. It just says, I made a terrible mistake. It is 100% my bad, and I understand what everyone thought about that. He also went so far as to retweet Chris Pakula with the video clip calling him out. Yeah. He didn't go on social media and call us all keyboard dojo warriors like What's His Nuts did. He didn't do an interview with, David Leavitt and try to wordplay it and blame everybody but himself like the other What's His Nuts did. In terms of PR and in terms of how you should play this publicly, I think Shuhei played it very well. He owned it. He seems ready to take whatever punishment comes. And I think that's how you should play this. And, I agree with you, Ruben. I don't know how I should feel about this, because I do like him and I am biased. But I think, how he's played it so far is quite admirable. And I hope that whatever happens, that's taken into account, that he didn't react the way that some of these other buffoons have, and only made it worse for himself.
All I can say is terrible. All that I can say is that I hope that the key word here is going to be investigation. And I hope that the investigation is thorough and finds an answer for us, because this is one that I don't know what to do with.
So this is what I would describe. There were the great poets known as Great White in the late '80s. They had a song called "Once Bitten, Twice Shy." Great
poets.
Oh, yes. They spoke to the soul, is what they did through all the hairspray.
By the way, it's Underground Dojo Keyboard Cage Fighters. I have a membership card in my wallet.
No, you have a membership pitchfork. They send you a little tiny, just a little pitchfork.
I'm really proud of the Magic community for not really getting out the pitchforks. Apparently, you need 100,000 pro points or planeswalker points to not have the pitchforks pulled out, and even there were some. But, I've seen a couple of reasonable explanations of what could possibly have happened. The most plausible to me is that there are not a ton of Flash Angels that are playable in Standard at any over the course of Magic, and one of the only other ones is Restoration Angel. So like maybe he thought that he had Restoration Angel mana, and like his brain just wasn't operating correctly. It was round 4, so he had just woken up because he had 3 buys. Like maybe there's something there. Like I'm digging, man.
Huey made a tweet and said something to the effect of, when you have somebody who's played 100,000 Planeswalker points worth of games, and never seems to have made a mistake, does something that he's been able to, get this, he has this unblemished record for the most part. And, should we allow somebody in Oops who has such a track record versus, random SCG pro number 35 who's only been playing for 2 years? It's an interesting discussion. Like, I definitely wonder if anything will change on the rules front, whether they'll become tighter or there will be exceptions granted. And, because we're consistently here, people are astute.
Well, right, and we are, but look, I mean, and I've been in those situations when you're at like the Pro Tour itself. Like all of the pros talk to each other. These people know each other. They understand basically if somebody's shady. Okay, before the Burton Cheese get kicked out, before the Betchers get kicked out, long before that happens, you had pros going, that guy is not as good as his results are showing. There's no way that person is doing that well because they don't play Magic that well. When you play Magic at that level, you know who's good and you know who's bad. And sure, you can't prove it, but let me tell you, there was nobody that's been banned in that fashion, like seeing patterns and so on and so forth, that the pros didn't already say, this guy is unbelievably shady and there's no way that they have won. Right. They should have done this at a Grand Prix, they should have done that at a WMCQ or whatever. So anyway, basically, I feel like, Shuhei gets the pass, but it's because we love him and we want to say like, look, I'm bitten, I'm now shy. Yeah. Please don't do it again.
Back to the master of metal, Evan Irwin. There.
No one wants to go and get there. All right, so we have a few minutes to talk about a thing and its stuff. And instead of going infinite, I would like to pull Mr. Ruben Bressler into the red zone.
Up?
Into the red zone.
Oh, yes.
It's red zone time. Yep. All right, so the red zone this week comes from the one and only Lee Sharpe. Wonderful dude. Fantastic guy. He says...
I mean, he does play Burn, though.
We all have our faults. Lee Sharpe asks, what are your thoughts on Magic Online running Time Spiral Block flashback drafts, but taking out Sprout Swarm as a tweak to make it more fun? And long go the responses. And so, Ruben, I will let you go first.
I'm going to Google Sprout Swarm while you do this, because I'm not familiar with that.
Just keep in mind that card is a common. So, Ruben, can you tell us a little bit about what Sprout Swarm does and is and why it's important and why you feel it should be removed?
Yeah, so if you played Time Spiral Planar Chaos Future Sight Draft, one of the most oppressive cards in the format actually was Sprout Swarm. It was
the oppressive card?
It was crazy. Look, man, you got to live back in the day when the rocks were soft and when all of this was trees. You got to think way back in time when a 1/1 for 5 mana, then 4 mana, then 3 mana, then for free for the rest of the game. You could build up incremental advantage because of the convoke cost on Sprout Swarm. So it was a lot of the time it was a Sprout Swarm lottery when you played in that format, and it made it kind of miserable. The rest of the format was great. You had lots of interesting archetypes happening. It's why I typically prefer to play double Time Spiral, single Planar Chaos, if given the opportunity. But it was one of the very few faults of the format, and oh, by the way, it's the only one that's a common. So if you could go back in time and redesign the set, and you didn't have to, kowtow to the restrictions of having cards be available for limited, then Sprout Swarm would be fine. But so the fact that you can change a format on Magic Online is an interesting tool that is at our disposal. I think that it would be a shame to not use one of the biggest strengths of the digital platform, of being able to go back and say, hey, we made a mistake with this. Maybe we should revisit and see how it goes. I think that people are interested in playing the format, and they're also interested in playing new formats. So people who never played Time Spiral Block previously don't know what they're missing. People who played Time Spiral Block previously do know what they're missing, and they're active. A lot of them would be actively against it. If you're just trying to live out your glory days, then you know that's a different story. But I'm all in favor of that. Or I mean, I guess you could change the rarity to uncommon, make it less of a ridiculous thing that happens like once out of every 4 drafts. If somebody just has the 2 Sprout Swarm deck or the 3 Sprout Swarm deck, and it's, I don't know. I think that it's a good format that has a small blemish on it, and this would be an interesting way to solve it.
I get that.
Okay, Evan.
I do.
Copyright infringement. Please don't.
I do, but you know you're wrong. I hate you.
All right.
However, here. So look, I would also like to save the clock tower. Okay. I would also like to go back in time and with Doc and Marty and hang out and go back and change all the things. I would like to go back in Time Spiral. You're welcome.
Yeah, that was really well done.
But look, seriously, for me, this is what the flashback drafts are. Imagine that you were a Magic player who lived in a world when all these sets were being drafted. Yeah, they screwed it up. But part of that screw up is part of the beauty of the format. Like, you know, it's warts and all. It's not, you know, if we could just make the Mona Lisa just a hair, just pull the lip up just a little bit so it's really clear that she's smiling. Just a hair. Just a smidge, you know, just takes a little bit of paint, a little bit of thing, and that's all you got to do. And if we could just take Sprout Swarm and just make it like uncommon, right? And then everything would be better. If we could just actually get rid of that, then, you know, everything would be okay. Like for me, these are moments in time. That's the whole gimmick. Now, if they wanted to do a gimmick where they're going back and they're changing things about formats, that's totally cool. But I feel like it was never expressed or marketed as, we're going to give you these old formats, and if there's something really busted about them, we're going to fix them before you get to play it. Versus, like, you know, look, I would love for, like, half of Saviors of Kamigawa not to show up on those flashback drafts, but I did it. Here's the stupid hand-sized matter cards, absolutely terrible. But it's okay, because you know what? It brought me back. I was right there, cursing at the packs like I was 10 years ago, and they still sucked. But it is what it is. It is a flash. It is a moment in time, and that's why I felt like it was incorrect to do anything to it, even if it's busted. At least it was what you signed up for and you knew existed at that point in time.
Right, and that would be the difference between doing, you know, Time Spiral Block Draft versus Time Spiral Remastered, like they did with Tempest. You can change, you know, the rarity of Rolling Thunder. I mean, there were so many more examples, obviously, from Tempest and Exodus and Stronghold,
right,
of things just being completely busted and limited, and they needed to change rarities. You know, I'm swayed by your argument. I think that the arguments that I made are still available, in that it is a digital platform, and this is an option available to us. And a small cosmetic change like this is not completely worth overhauling everything for a completely new remastered set. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, when a card is oppressive and limited, it tends to be a rare, something like Citadel Siege, Pack Rat. Those are your go-to examples. Sprout Swarm is among the very few that, you know, were just like, oh, well, somebody opened a bunch of Sprout Swarms. That's it, I guess. Nobody else gets to have fun. And I think that some of that might be my own personal bias, because I played so much of the Time Spiral Block format that I you know, recall losing to Sprout Swarm over and over and over.
So did I. And I understand, you know what I mean? And so part of you goes like, okay, like there are drafts where Sprout Swarm isn't a thing, or there are drafts where Sprout Swarm doesn't win, you know, people games necessarily. But there's also, you know, games where it takes over entirely, and there's that incredible like visceral rush of like, oh my god, I opened all the Sprout Swarms. Like, oh my god, I got 3 Sprout Swarms, and somebody passed me like a 3rd pick Sprout Swarm. Oh my god, you know, like that.
Right.
There is those moments. They exist.
Yeah.
Aaron, how on a scale from 1 to Ruben Bressler, how little do you care?
Ruben Ressler.
There you go.
I'm going to agree with, if I had to choose somebody to side with, I would side with Evan. I feel like if you're signing up to draft a set, you are signing up to draft a set. And I feel like, it affects the experience. I feel like it's something that it's easy to say when you're on the wrong side of the card, but when you're the one opening the Sprout Swarms, it does feel terrific. And I'm gonna give this one to Evan. So
sure, I think that there is something of getting the exact experience of what happened in 2005 or whatever year Time Spiral block draft was.
But I worry it also.
But on the flip side, if I spend $10 on a draft and I'm like, I remember this feeling of not getting to play Magic because my opponent's got this ridiculous card in their deck, then that's not what I'm looking for when I'm playing Magic online. I think that the end goal for Magic is to make the game as accessible and fun as possible for its players.
But there are people that find that accessible and fun. It's like the same argument with the screwed up decks that I play. It's like, we make, or even when you played Lantern Control, Ruben, it's like, there are people who don't like being on the other side of Lantern Control, but there are people like you that enjoy that kind of deck and people like me that enjoy Dredge. And so there should be room for everybody to have that, where it's like, just because we don't enjoy that, and even Burn, I don't care for Burn, but, there are people that's their idea of fun. That's what they come to play Magic for. And to pass an edict that says this is the only way to play or the only way to have fun, I'm not really sure that that's doing anybody any favors.
There's a difference between that and having something that's so overpowered that no one else gets to play Magic anymore. Now, I'm not saying Sprout Swarm is on that level, but I think that it is a reasonable thing to say, maybe Lingering Souls should be rare in Innistrad flashback drafts, right? Like that's the kind of card I'm talking about.
I like the chat notes that they're surprised that Ruben, the person who didn't like draft leagues, is for tweaking a format.
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference between tweaking a format and tweaking like how you play the game, right?
Fair enough. All right, so we got to keep moving here.
Or you could just consider me a hypocrite. Like if you want to do that, then fine.
Whatever. if you want to judge a person, you certainly can judge a person. Go nuts. So splash damage is where we talk a little bit about Magic, but not necessarily about the game itself or the culture itself. Things that are kind of related. So there's an editor in R&D. His name is Tim Aten, and if you've been around Magic for a while, you know exactly who Tim Aten was. He was one of the best authors in Magic. Like his articles were unbelievably good. Like he was crazy good. And when he was writing all the time, it was wonderful. And it's actually been really fun for me because I've been doing this a long time. At this point, I'm editor-in-chief over there at Gathering Magic, and it's fine. And I've seen content come, and I've seen content go. And I can tell you some of the best that were around. And Tim Aten really, really had a special spark to him and did great. And was one of those guys that, I think you said it best, Ruben, was that the only person who doesn't like Tim Aten is Tim Aten. Like, it's the only guy because, like, he's one of those guys that he has a lot of charisma, whether he likes it or not. People want to like him. People like his stuff. They want to hear from him. They respect him. And that's awesome. And he's also crushing it on Jeopardy.
On actual Jeopardy, yeah.
Real Jeopardy.
He got his 5th in a row. He's a 5-day champion on Jeopardy. He has a current total of $71,300. And with his 5th win today, he is locked in for the Tournament of Champions, the next one of which is going to be in March. So one of our own is in the Tournament of Champions, and it couldn't happen to a better guy. I mean, obviously, if you just need to go back and read some of Tim Aten's work. He's written some of the most classic diss articles I've ever read in my life. In addition to being one of the smartest tactical minds that's come through the game. He's just a special dude, and I'm really having fun watching someone that I know in real life just kind of killing it.
Yeah, absolutely. So he was on the SCG Premium side for a while, and he talks about American Magic and players in them, and a wonderful storyteller, terrific writer. There you go.
Yeah, he's one of those people that you're just like, you say their name, and if you say Tim Aten, and people are like, oh yeah, and he's treated with reverence. It's like Jeff Cunningham.
Oh yeah.
It's a very similar. 90% of people are going to be like, I don't what, and then everyone else is like, oh, Fedge. right? So if
yeah.
you can connect on that level, we'll put that one also in the Ruben is terribly old pile.
Aaron, you have any idea who Jeff Cunningham is?
I know that I don't have him blocked on Twitter.
It's a good point. Also, that his younger brother, Top 8, made the finals of a recent Pro Tour.
Oh.
But yeah, I mean, and looking at so I'm looking at thejeopardygame.com, and Tim's stats are kind of staggering. He's got really weird stats compared to other people that are good at Jeopardy, in that he doesn't buzz in as often, but when he buzzes in, he's just right. Like he has
That's
5.
a thing? Like people track this?
Apparently, thejeopardyfan.com.
Wow, bless their hearts.
He has, over the 5-day span, he's gotten 74 correct and 5 incorrect.
Wow.
I've heard tell from folks at Wizards of the Coast. By the way, they have a viewing party to watch Tim. So if you haven't seen the episode yet, you probably did on the West Coast by this point. But they have a viewing party, and he would go to trivia nights, and he was like the captain of the trivia team. And he would still win trivia night when no one else from WotC showed up.
Oh, wow.
So
they have found themselves an end boss.
Yes.
And it's going to be
So
really
he could be
exciting
like the
to see
next
that.
Ken Jennings if he keeps this up, yeah?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I would love it. Yeah, he's just got this, he's got this really just weird confidence, sort of disdain sometimes. Like when he bids the wrong number, it's so funny. When he like gets a daily double and he's like 2,200, and then they give him an easy question, he's just like so mad at himself that he didn't get it more.
Killed.
Just like
Let's
shaking
go all
his
in.
head and being like, ugh, here's the answer.
Should have doubled up, man.
Yeah,
Fantastic. So
I hope he just keeps on crushing it.
absolutely. So good luck to Tim. I hope he keeps doing really, really well. I really do think that he could be a Jeopardy All-Star because
Absolutely.
he's already crushing it.
And if you want to follow him on Twitter, he has a hilarious Twitter handle. It's @allfairness,
Yes.
which is an amazing Twitter handle.
So good. All right. So I was going to briefly touch on my versus thing because I like versus system, but we won't. Because we got to turn the corner. You know what? I'm putting it in. I'm squeezing it in there. Shoehorn
Well, I
it.
referenced
You
Real
put
quick.
it in enough, mister.
Versus, saw what you did there. Versus system to PCG. This is the versus system that doesn't suck after turn 4. So it's the new versus system, and they came out with it, and it was really fun. If you like, you obviously like complicated card games, you're playing Magic, you're going to enjoy this one because it's another complicated card game. But however, it's super fun, but they screwed it up. They made Thanos rather way too good. He was just busted, and he had a really weird ability, and he made you play really weird. And when you finally got to the tournament level of versus system play, it was like something like 60% Thanos, like of the entire room. The 60% of this one deck was ridiculous. And how to beat the mirror was this big thing or whatever, because his ability basically killed your 2 breast creatures, killed a land, and made you discard your hand.
Did you just say breast creatures?
No. Anyway,
Apparently.
two of your best creatures is what I said. But regardless, and it makes you discard your hand. As it turns out, when you make people discard their hand, and you could do this literally as early as turn 4 in Versus System, that's broken. So here's how they fixed it. And here's why this is interesting. The way that they're fixing it is that they are printing another Thanos. And this Thanos is going to replace the original. They are doing what they call ban and replace. It's not just you can't play with that Thanos anymore, we'll make more Thanoses, it's fine. It's like, no. This is the Thanos that we should have made to start with. It's far powered down than it used to be. Now you just lose 1 card at random in your hand versus like all of them. But now, imagine if they said, this Jace the Mind Sculptor is busted. Sorry, oops, here's a new Jace the Mind Sculptor. It's going to replace the old Jace the Mind Sculptor. You cannot play with the original Jace the Mind Sculptor in tournaments or whatever. So that's a really interesting way to solve a problem in that, oops, I screwed it up. This is how they can do it in a living card game type fashion.
Yeah, it's an interesting solution. The equivalent, if they tried to do something like this for Magic, it would be something along the lines of, here we printed Jace the Mind Sculptor. We're going to put the new Jace the Mind Sculptors in, let's say, like F&M promos or not F&M promos, like WMCQ rare or whatever. And your old ones are still playable, so that you don't have to buy $100 Jaces again. They're just going to have the text of the new one.
Right.
That would be how you'd have to do it in a CG or any collectible card game, as opposed to a living card game like this. I think this is an interesting solution to a problem that has sort of plagued TCGs forever, which is, what do you do when you accidentally release a horrific, overpowered something onto the metagame? And so this is an interesting way to go with it. And I'm not up on the versus system living card game power rankings or tournament series anymore. But it's a cool way to try to solve the problem.
Aaron, you ready to ban some dredge cards and make some new ones?
Yeah, there you go.
Evan, that is the meanest thing you've ever said to me.
What? Where did it happen? All right.
That's the meanest thing that he's ever said to you. You are just a peach, is what you are.
You're the peachiest.
I've said worse to her today.
Wow.
I did.
Right now.
All you did was threaten to phantom ban dredge cards.
Right? That's all I do.
That's not even that
here.
Mean.
Fantastic.
Just a teddy bear is all it is.
There you go. So we're going to turn the corner to the finisher. Now, 2 days ago, Magic TCG was the subreddit of the day on the front page of the internet, reddit.com, for those who aren't aware. For those unfamiliar, Reddit highlights a sub to feature every day, and yesterday, or rather 2 days before,
2 days ago. Well, I wrote this finisher,
yesterday, clearly. 2 days ago, it just so happened to be our turn. So today, for example, some of the subs du jour include /r/dumpster diving /r/Final Fantasy, and my fave /r/old people DGAF.
Is that real?
That's real.
Of course it is.
DGAF.
Oh, you'd be surprised at what real subreddits exist. But we did have our moment in the sun. So if you could speak to a random Redditor who stumbled across /r/MagicTCG, what words of advice would you give them, Aaron?
All right. Well, I would say, hello, 18 to 40-year-old white male, I assume, since you're on Reddit. Thanks for stopping by our little game. This Reddit is just like everything else on Reddit. Some halfway decent discussion threads, but mostly just trolls and pictures of cats.
Ruben?
Cat. Ours are cat planeswalkers, at least. But so Reddit recently got in a bit of hot water. I don't know if you heard about this. When they admitted to when the CEO or CFO or somebody admitted to altering some users' posts in /r/the Donald, which is the Donald Trump subreddit. But fear not, that would never happen on Magic TCG, since we barely know how to make Magic Online great again.
We don't. So, no. I would actually argue there's infinite good ideas of making it great again, but those don't get listened to.
You don't know how to implement it?
Yeah, that's not how it works. So those of you who are new to our sub will be perfectly fine if you spend enough time on the site you were already playing mono Reddit aggro.
Yeah.
Shut it down.
Yeah, wow. Shut it down.
If you're playing mono Reddit, you have to be playing aggro.
Wow.
Or aggro.
Aggro. You gotta play the
aggro.
aggro.
That's how you say it.
Super aggro-y.
The revolt.
The revolt. All right.
Aggro.
So that ends another episode of Magic Mics. Guys, I want to thank you for hanging out and joining us here for all things Magic. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ruben.
Thank you. Thank the audience for putting up with our 24-hour delay.
Yeah.
But you know what? It all worked out.
It did all work out.
And thank you for the downloads. Like, there are so many shows that you could be watching or listening to, and you're choosing ours, and that's just, it's insane to think about. Like,
yeah.
And you all are wonderful, and we love you, and we're going to move on to our final slide. So that ends another episode of Magic Mics. Thank you guys for joining us here to discuss all things Magic. I want to thank my co-hosts, you guys, for watching. I hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmics. Visit our website at magicmicspodcast.com that exists thanks to our Patreon supporters, or follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe, do everything social that tells people that we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv/magicmics, on Twitter at magicmicscast, on Reddit at reddit.com/r/magicmics, and on Facebook at facebook.com/magicmics. Talk to us privately at magicmicspodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at magicmicspodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes, or join us here next week, same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.